So anybody would like to share anything from previous class? Make some comments, clarifications. So by now, I'm sure you would have understood how different this supercapacitor is from the batteries. Batteries are electrode specific. Depending on the electrodes, we have different batteries. So we can have lead as an anode and lead dioxide as a cathode in the case of lead acid battery. Zinc as anode and manganese dioxide as a cathode in the case of primary dry cells. Similarly, in lithium-ion batteries, we may have lithium or lithiated graphite as an anode, and we have variety of cathodes. So depending on the anodes and the cathodes, we have different battery systems. They store energy or they store the charges. In the case of supercapacitors, we have two distinct approaches. Carbon and related to carbon materials are one group of materials. They mostly undergo charge separation when such carbon is immersed in an electrolyte. There are no Faradaic reactions. There are other materials like sulfides, oxides, polymers. They undergo some sort of electrochemical reaction. They may be a battery material or they may not be a battery material, but can hold the charge. Not very high charges like batteries, but it can hold charges. And we term such materials or such capacitors as Faraday capacitors or redox capacitors. And they can be quantified in terms of capacitance, energy density or specific energy, power density or specific power. And definitely there is a use of electrolyte, whether it is acid, base or neutral in the form of solution. If you don't use solution, if the electrodes are metals, then it is called condensers or parallel plate capacitors. And the electrolyte here is dielectric, polarizable insulators. Okay, these are the things we have seen so far. Anybody would like to add anything more on this? Make some comments, clarifications. Shall we go ahead further? Okay. So is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So we have seen that somebody joined. We have seen that in the case of double layer capacitors, EDLC. What is double layer capacitor? You take a conducting material, immerse in an electrolyte. The electrolyte can be acid, base or neutral. What happens? Assume that it is a conductor, metal, and we know that metals have large number of electrons. At the vicinity of metals in contact with the electrolyte, there can be a buildup of charge. Metals, they originally have electrons and they attract positive charges in one hand. On the other hand, so two electrodes are required for making a capacitor. The opposite charge will be formed. The formation of or the creation of these two charges is known as double layer, and that is the basis for holding the charges in electrical double layer capacitors or EDLC. This is an electrode or conductor immersed in the electrolyte. What is an electrolyte? Ion conducting medium. The concentration away from the electrode is usual concentration. For example, if you are making a 1 molar KOH, 1 molar sulfuric acid, 1 molar sodium sulfate, ion concentration at the bulk. When I say bulk, it is away from the electrode. Assume that this is a conductor and vessel, so far away from the electrode. That is the away from the electrode. Concentration of the ions will be similar. But at the vicinity of this electrode or the conductor, because of this formation of the double layer, there will be more number of ions absorbed compared to the bulk. Because the electrode or the conductor has negative ions, it will attract positive ions. At the other electrode, automatically negative ions will be attracted. You can create either way. So you see that there is no concentration change or gradient in the bulk, but there is a concentration gradient or difference at the vicinity of the electrode. This vicinity of the electrode is known as interface. Interface. The close proximity of the electrode with that in contact with the electrolyte is known as interface. And that is known as double layer. In one side, all the negative ions are attracted. Another side, all the positive ions are attracted. Two layers of charges are built up. And if you see that the number of charges are equal, number of positive charges will be equal to that of the negative charges. Only difference is opposite in sign. So this is the similar situation what we encounter in parallel plate capacitor when we polarize a dielectric matrix with the applied potential. There also charge is built up, and here also charge is built up in the presence of electrolyte. Here the dielectric is replaced by the electrolyte. Whether neutral, positive, neutral or acid or base, that is different. And this holds the basis for charge storage in EDLC. Now it looks simple. Now means these days, maybe 2000 or after 2000. But think of when the sciences were evolving 50 years before, 60 years before. How one would have imagined why such a device can be made. A double layer can be formed. How it can be formed? Who would have thought 60 years before, 50 years before, when you immerse a conductor in a solution, there is a built-up of charge. Now it looks so simple. But 50, 60 years before, who would have thought? So by the way, this double layer can be represented using these symbols. Okay, so parallel plate place electrodes and separated with the electrolyte resistance. You see that when a conductor is immersed in electrolyte, there is a formation of electrified interface. What is an electrified interface? There is a charged interface is forming at the vicinity of the electrode. In one side, it is negatively charged. Another side, positively charged. So we call this as an electrified interface. It is basically an interface. What is an interface? The vicinity of the electrode, solid material, solid metal or conductor in contact with the electrolyte. That's an electrode. And at the vicinity or very close proximity of the electrode surface, there is a built-up of charge. In both the electrodes, opposite charges are built up. And we call it as a electrode double. And the charges are there, negative charges in one side, positive charges in another side, and it is called electrified interface. Altogether, the charge, total net charge will be 0, but in one side negative, another side is positive. How much will be the electric field at the vicinity of the electrode? You see here as high as 10 power 9 volt per meter. And this electric field extends to only very narrow distance from the electrode, up to 0.5 nanometer only. Up to 0.5 nanometer. After that, it is not filled. That is why you have to have a close proximity of the parallel plate in order to have the charge storage or to have the strong electrostatic field of attraction present. It looks simple now. So when you take a container and immerse an electrolyte, maybe a salt solution, there is a formation of interface. Now it looks simple because conductor, large number of electron, pool of electrons, and it will attract positive charge, and at the other side, it will attract negative side. This simple imagination or simple understanding has come because of various theories. At least 4 theories have come by now. There are many very recent theories are there. But 4-5 prominent theories have come to bring about the understanding of the formation of double layer, which is the basis for charge storage in supercapacitors or ultra capacitors or electrochemical double layer capacitors or EDLCs. In the case of pseudo capacitor, redox capacitor or Faraday capacitor, it is very well known, because there is a definite Faraday reaction that is the basis for charge storage. In the absence of redox reaction, how do we account for the charge storage in electrical double layer capacitor? Several theories have come. The first and foremost theory is Helmholtz model or Helmholtz theory. Helmholtz model or Helmholtz theory. And this Helmholtz theory or Helmholtz model is also known as compact double layer theory. A compact double layer theory. As the name implies, a double layer is formed in a rigid manner. It means a densely packed negative ions and positive ions are formed at the interface. It might look very simple now in 2021 or 2020 or after 2020. But 60 years before, 50 years before, please think of how prominent these understanding would have been on the interface. You have an electrode, you have a conductor, immerse in the solution. This Helmholtz thought that, or put forwarded his theory that there is a formation of compact layer. And it is rigid. And there is an ordering of positive and negative ions in a compact manner or in a rigid manner. in both the electrodes. And this occurs at the interface. After certain distance, it is usual electrolyte. There is no compact layer forming at the bulk of the electrolyte. And this is how the potential varies, linearly varying. So if this is the electrode surface and this is the bulk electrolyte, at the close vicinity, the electrostatic force, electric field is linearly varying. After that, it is almost zero. After that, almost zero. And since there is a compact double layer is formed and there is a formation of holding of charge, which can be quantified in capacitance CD. D is double layer capacitance. It extends to some distance. And we can very much quantify in terms of this using this equation. In electrochemical double layer capacitors, the capacitance that we get is Helmholtz capacitance. CD or CS, specific capacitance or double layer capacitance, is nothing but Helmholtz capacitance. And this theory is given by Helmholtz. What is the problem? Is there any problem with this model or this theory? There is a ion conducting solution. You take a conductor and immerse it. There is a formation of charged interface. Double layer is formed. And you quantify the charge that is being stored between the electrodes is termed as a capacitance. Is only the compact double layer is forming, is the contributing to the capacitance or anything else? There is something else also. It's not only the compact double layer contributing to the capacity. The interaction between the ions can also contribute to the overall charge storage. But unfortunately, Helmholtz did not consider. So Helmholtz model did not adequately explain or provide the rationale for the double layer capacitance because he did not consider the interactions. He has neglected the interactions between the ions, between the charged species. Then came another theory. This theory is known as diffused layer theory and is given by Guy and Chapman theory or Guy-Chapman model, and it is not compact rigid layer, it is diffuse layer theory. You see here, please look at this cartoon. The double layer, the accumulation of the charges is very rigid, compact, densely packed. Call it as a rigid double layer or compact double layer. But you see here, this cartoon, this is an electrode, solid, is a solution, and the charges are not compact. It is here and there, diffused. It is scattered, diffused. So Guy-Chapman, they told that it is not the rigid double layer that is forming at the interface of the electrode and electrolyte. It is diffused double layer is formed. Something like this. And as a consequence, the electric field is not varying linearly, but it is varying non-linear, almost like a exponential. Exponential. It is not linear. And the capacitance is not constant, but it is parabolic. It is a parabolic. So only difference between the previous theory and this theory is previous theory assumes that a compact or rigid double layer is formed, and Guy-Chapman model assumes that it is not compact or rigid double layer, it is diffused double layer. Again, there is a problem with this model. Guy-Chapman also neglected the interactions. The interaction between the ion and the charged species is also neglected, or it did not consider. That was the understanding that time. These theories were developed in 1950, before 1960, 1950. Then came Stern model. Stern. What he has done is, he has assumed it is neither compact rigid layer nor diffused double layer. It comprises both compact layer as well as the diffused layer. Up to certain distance from the electrode, it is a compact layer. After that, there is a scattered or diffused double layer is forming. And you see here, as a cartoon shown here, this is the solid electrode, and there is a, at the visit very close of the electrode or the solid, there is a compact layer, and then a double layer is extending little further. There the ions are not in contact, but it is diffused. So as a consequence, according to Stern model, there is a linear variation of electric field up to certain distance. After that, it is non-linear. So capacitance is constant up to certain distance. After that, it is varying, exponential. So basically this Stern comprises both Helmholtz theory and Guy-Chapman theory. Helmholtz theory and Guy-Chapman theory. So now it might look simple, but 50 years before, 60 years before, this understanding is a great importance. So to realize the capacitors. So after outer Helmholtz plane, the capacitance or the electric field is non-linearly varying, exponential. Outer Helmholtz plane. So what is outer Helmholtz plane? At the place where the electric field is not linear. That is the outer Helmholtz plane. I will introduce you another plane, inner Helmholtz plane. Next theory. So this Stern model comprises the charge that is being stored comprises Helmholtz charge and Guy-Chapman charge. What is Helmholtz charge? Charge is charge due to rigid double layer formation. What is Guy-Chapman charge? The charge that is arising due to diffused layer. The combination of this Helmholtz charge and Guy-Chapman charge is the total charge. So at distance 0, there is no potential, but at a little distance there is a potential drop. So we have a metal in the solid, and we have a solution So the potential drop is due to the combination of these work functions. Or work function is roughly assumed as a ionization potential. Based on the ionization potential of the metal or the electrode and that of the solution is the total charge. I have better information here. Depending on the concentration of the electrolyte, whether the concentration of Helmholtz concentration is larger or Guy-Chapman concentration is the larger, we have a capacitance. So let's see if the Guy-Chapman concentration is least, or it means essentially at a very large concentration, there will be a formation of rigid double layer or compact double layer. The capacitance contributed by the Helmholtz plane or Helmholtz layer is large. So it essentially the total capacitance is the capacitance of the Helmholtz layer. If the electrolyte concentration is low, then this diffused layer is contributing. It's not rigid, it is diffused compact layer, diffused layer. So in that case, the total charge is the charge due to Guy-Chapman capacitance. Two extreme conditions. So then came this model, fourth model, Graham model. He has introduced three layers, three regions. So to explain the double layer, he is using three regions. One region is inner Helmholtz plane, IHP. Another region is outer Helmholtz plane, OHP. Then diffused layer that is similar to that of the previous model, that is 10 model. OHP and a diffused layer. How do you depict in a cartoon wise? This is how. Whenever we talk about ions in a solution, for example, you take a salt, table salt, and dissolve it in water. So sodium chloride dissociates into Na plus and Cl minus. Whether this Na plus is all alone and similarly Cl minus is all alone. No, they are surrounded by solvent molecules. If you dissolve sodium chloride in water, the solvent molecules are water. Na plus will be surrounded by solvent molecules, water molecules. Up to the electric field is felt, this solvation radius will be there. Similarly, up to the electric field is felt or electrostatic force is felt, the charge, these solvent molecules will be held with some radius. So if this is a sodium ion, there will be a solvated sodium ion radius. These are all solvent molecules. If this is a Cl minus, there will be a solvation radius surrounded by solvent molecule. Solvent molecule is water. In this case, it is having neutral charge, no negative, not positive. It can be attached to negative ions or positive ions. Okay. You see here, it's not only the formation of rigid double layer or diffuse double layer, the ions surrounding the charges or solvent molecules surrounding the ions can also contribute to the capacitance. So you see, this is the electrode, solid matrix, and there is a interface is forming. And by now, we know that there is neither diffused layer nor compact layer. It is a combination of diffused rigid layer. Rigid layer up to certain distance, we call this as a IHP, up to which rigid layer is forming, inner Helmholtz plane. From IHP up to diffused layer is forming is known as, that layer is known as OHP. OHP. After that, it is a very diffused layer, bulk. Linear variation of charge, electric field to IHP, almost non-linear variation up to OHP, then exponential variation in the diffused layer. You see here. Now you think of first theory, Helmholtz layer. We have three regions of different charges or double layer forming, but first theory told that it is only linear variation. Second theory told it is non-linear variation. Third theory told it is neither linear or non-linear. It is combination of linear, non-linear, and now again having the ion-ion interactions. Ion-ion interactions. So we have three regions to explain the AA capacitance. Inner Helmholtz plane, very close to the electrode, and a little away from the electrode, outer Helmholtz plane, and the diffused layer. And you see here, when we have a metal as an electrode, so there can be a specific ions. Certain metals, they can attract only particular ions compared to other charged species. The charge stored by specifically adsorbed ions was not considered in previous theories. Guy Chapman, Helmholtz, Stern, but here Graham model, it assumes, it considers. So not only the charge storage by the specifically adsorbed ions, charge storage by the regular ions. They are non-specific. They are non-specific. Okay, non-specific. But another theory came. This is very recent theory, maybe 30 years before. Bockris, Devanathan, and Muller theory. Bockris, I think he is Australia. Devanathan, so maybe Indian, went to Sri Lanka, then came back to India, worked in Sikri, Devanathan, connected to Sikri. Then Muller. These three people accounted for the complete double layer formation. Complete double layer formation. They assumed everything. Rigid layer, diffuse layer, ion-ion interaction, and solvent viscosity or concentrations, everything. And this Bockris, Devanathan, and Muller theory could be able to explain the complete picture of what we know now is the double layer capacitors. So they assume there is a compact layer, there is a diffuse layer, there is a ion-ion interaction, there is a solvent molecule interaction also. It's not only ions, specific ions, there is a solvent molecule interaction also leads to the charge storage. So since there is a charges, there is a electrokinetic potential zeta, or also known as zeta. At a plane or at a place where there is a charge. There is a charge. I think I have a better configuration. Oh. So, You see here, the theories previously were like this, but now, as per Boggries, Devanathan and Muller, the double layer is something like this. When I say there is a charge separation, this and all happens. This is a metal or a conductor and the solution part, and a double layer is comprising these things. There is a accumulation of solvent molecules, there is a interaction of the solvent molecules, there is a then ion, solvent ion, electrolytic ion absorption. Previously it was like this. Previously it was like this. So this is the basis now holding the charges in electrical double layer. You take a carbon rod, immerse in sulfuric acid, take another carbon rod, immerse in sulfuric acid, connect it, and there is a formation of double layer we call. That double layer, this kind of configuration. This understanding has come after 30, 40 years or last 10, 15 years before we could understand. And now we can make use of this double layer for a practical applications to store the charges. We have capacitors, energy storage devices. In the modern, now very recently, we have hybrid capacitor, capacitory, super capacitory, asymmetric capacitory. We can make use of this double layer charge storage mechanism along with the redox capacitor in order to enhance the energy density and power density of such devices. So all these theory, they consider only the electrolyte part and how this electrolyte is interacting with the metal or the electrode. But depending on the metal also, there can be a strength of the double layer that is forming. Metals like mercury, consider metals like mercury, platinum or lithium. All are metals, but they are not all same. Their ability to get ions out or the electrons out different, or their work functions are different. Work function of mercury is different, work function of platinum is different, work function of lithium is different. If the work functions of these metals are different, then the double layer forming also will be different, or the strength or the effectiveness of the double layer that is forming also will be different. Okay, so or maybe you can term in terms of a general name, surface potentials, surface potential of metal. Okay, I think I'm mostly done with these theories. I don't know how much you would appreciate these theories. It might look simple now, but these theories were evolved in 1950, 1940 before. So with those understanding, now it looks very simple to construct a double layer capacitor. Okay, so now, so you can divide the total capacitance is like a two series connected capacitance. The total capacitance is 1 by inverse capacitance is a series connected two capacitance. One is capacitance due to Guy-Chapman layer, another capacitance to Helmholtz layer. So we have previously seen that when you connect two capacitors in series, the total capacitance is the inverse addition. Same situation occurs here in double layer. There is a capacitance formed due to Guy-Chapman layer. There is a double layer formed due to Helmholtz layer. They are not equal. They are not equal. One is diffused layer, another one is rigid layer. Compact layer, diffused layer. So that total capacitance is inverse additive. 1 by C is equal to 1 by CH and 1 by CG. And this is the simple equivalent circuit if you want to describe a capacitor. There is a solution resistance There is a double layer resistance and actual capacitance, double layer capacitance. And of course, the voltage or the cell potential, half cell potential, you can have it. So when we say like this, it represents a capacitor, equivalent circuit. You can write equivalent circuit for a battery, equivalent circuit for a capacitor. You can write a equivalent circuit for admittance, etc. Similarly, you can write a equivalent circuit for capacitors like this. RD is double layer resistance, and CD is double layer capacitance. RS is solution resistance. So you can quantify how much is the capacitance, energy density. Last class we have seen it. We have seen these things last class. So now let us move to the actual working of the capacitors, supercapacitors. So anything would like to make some comments? Anything you have in mind so far? I don't know how much you will appreciate its pure theoretical aspects to understand the double layer formation and double layer capacitance. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So this is very important. This is very important. This is only we actually work in practical. We know we can use carbon and related to carbon materials as a capacitor material, a supercapacitor material, ultra capacitor materials. Polymers can also be used. Metal oxides, metal sulfides, and a combination of all these things can be also used as an electrode or a material. If it is only carbon, it is a non-Faraday material or EDLC material. If I ask you to give one example for EDLC material, blindfold and say carbon-based materials. Similarly, for Faraday material, any metal oxide. I can't say any metal oxide. Maybe magnesium oxide is not a Faraday material, but nickel oxide is a Faraday material. Cobalt hydroxide is a Faraday material. Maybe PANI, polyaniline, polypyrrole is a Faraday material. Or any carbon material having some functional groups can be a Faraday material, mostly. Mostly carbon-based materials are non-Faraday. But if it is having some functional groups, one or two functional groups, then we can expect, in addition to EDLC, the redox capacitor also. For example, graphene oxide. Not pure graphene. Graphene oxide may have little Faraday effect. Functionalized graphene oxide will have some Faraday effect. But nickel oxide, nickel hydroxide, polymers, sulfides, chalcogenides, all these will have, or example for Faraday materials. If I take two carbon electrodes and immerse in sulfuric acid, I am going to develop a capacitor. Two carbon electrodes immersed in an electrolyte, I am going to make a capacitor. And that capacitor we know now, it is a electrical double layer capacitor. Generally, there are no redox reaction taking place on the carbon materials. And you term it as a electrochemical double layer capacitor. Now I will call that as a symmetric capacitor. Because why I call this as a symmetric? We have identical electrode. Both are carbon electrodes. One will be connected to negative, another one will be connected to positive terminal of a voltage source. Now you charge. So charge separation will take place because the electrolyte has the negative ions, positive ions. So all the positive ions will be attracted to negative electrode. All the negative ions will be attracted to positive electrodes. A double layer is forming. How that is forming? What is the interface structure? Four theories so far we have seen it. Guy-Chapman theory, Helmholtz theory, Stern model, Graham model, Bockris, Devanathan, Muller theory. and how much is the capacitance it can deliver, that is the quantified. Now I call this as a symmetric capacitor because both the electrodes are identical. Both the electrodes are identical. It need not be carbon. It can be both the electrodes are ruthenium oxide, or both the electrodes can be PANI. Both the electrodes can be nickel oxide. Still I call it as a symmetric supercapacitor. Symmetric supercapacitor. If one of the electrode is different, for example, one electrode is ruthenium oxide, nickel oxide, or cobalt hydroxide, or PANI. Another electrode is just activated carbon, or just carbon, or some polymer. You call this as a asymmetric supercapacitor. Asymmetric supercapacitor. Or it is also known as hybrid supercapacitors. If both the electrodes are same, you call it as a symmetric. If they are different, asymmetric. Generally, this asymmetric supercapacitor capacitance will be larger compared to the symmetric, because here there is one Faradaic electrode. You please remember, if you compare the magnitude of the EDLC and the pseudo capacitor or redox capacitor will have large charge storage. One electrode, redox electrode, another electrode is EDLC electrode. The combined device, supercapacitor, will have much higher capacitance compared to the EDLCs. That is how the current research or development is going on in this field, developing asymmetric capacitors. We have made in our lab, we have made a lot of materials, progress we have made. Energy density from 15 watt-hour per kg to 150 watt-hour per kg, we have improved. How many times? One order of energy density we have improved by moving towards asymmetric capacitor or hybrid capacitor. And the modern, very recent terminology is supercapacitor. Recent terminology is supercapacitor. Very much our lab contributed in this regard in India. Supercapacitor. It essentially combines one Faradaic material. It may be a battery electrode or need not be a battery electrode. Another electrode is EDLC, maybe activated carbon or reduced graphene oxide. As the features of redox behavior as well as the EDLC behavior, and you get very large capacitance or energy storage. How will you make and test this supercapacitor? Actually, this experiment is there in practicals. You would practically demonstrate this if you would have had offline classes. You would literally make supercapacitor and make charge discharge cyclic voltammogram and see whether it is having peak or only rectangular cyclic voltammogram. Make use of this charge discharge profile to estimate the capacitance, energy density, power density, cycle life, Coulombic efficiency, etc. Similar to that of the batteries. How to make? First, we need to make the material. So for example, let's assume you are planning to make a carbon-carbon ultra capacitor. First, you need to have the carbon. How will you get carbon? Maybe you can buy from the market. If it is in the form of a powder, you have to convert them into an electrode, solid electrode. How? You take powder, add some binder so that when you attach with some substrate, carbon substrate or metal surface, foil, stainless steel foil or aluminum foil or platinum foil, you need this paste has to get harder to the surface. You need a binder. If it is not a carbon, if it is an oxide material, they all have a less conductivity. So to increase the conductivity, you add some graphite into that conducting particles. Mix it, thoroughly mix it. 1 hour, 2 hours, you have to grind this. Similar way you do for battery also. During my student days, my senior colleague in our lab used to tell when I entered that lab, my job is to only grind for 6 hours to make this electrode mass. Take lithium cobalt oxide, graphite, PVDF binder, mix it for 6 hours, sometimes beyond 6 hours. No other job. That is the first job you have been given by your senior when I was a PhD student. Now the same job can be done by your ball milling. 20 years before, we didn't have 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, we used to grind it. So that proper mixing of your active material, either carbon or nickel oxide or any other oxide with that of the conducting particle and the binder is taking place. For an effective mixing, you have to add some volatile solvents. Maybe isopropyl alcohol or acetone or N-hexane, etc. You had grind it so that mixing taking place and the solvent evaporates. You had again like this, you have to repeat for 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. Then you get a syrupy paste like a syrup that can be applied on a current collector. It can be a carbon cloth or stainless steel foil or platinum foil or aluminum foil, depending on the electrolyte that you are going to use it. Aluminum foil cannot be used in acid or base, it will corrode. Stainless steel, to some extent, you can use it in a base. Platinum can be used anywhere. Carbon can be used in any condition. So depending on the electrolyte, you have to choose the substrate or the current collectors. On that, you apply this paste, dry it, completely dry it. Many a time after drying, we have to press it, hot press it or normal press it, so that you reduce the contact resistance or grain boundary resistance. What is compact resistance? Sorry to use this my cloth. If it is a carbon cloth, you apply a paste. There is a surface for this cloth and particles are assumed that they are spherical particles. How much adherence of these particles to this surface, we don't know. But if you press it, better adherence can be there. You will reduce the contact resistance. The resistance present between the current collector and the particles, solid particles, is known as compact resistance. Not only that, there can be a grain boundary resistance. Grain we know. What is grain boundary resistance? So when you have a 1 gram of solid mass, consists of grains. So it's not that it is not monolithic. It is not one grain. Multiple grains are present. The boundaries are the separation. There is a separation between the grains. And we call it as a grain boundary. And they are not monolithic. There is even some Armstrong distance. The resistance offered by these grain boundaries is known as grain boundary resistance. If it is enormous, if it is large, whatever the charge stored in the double layer will be taken out to overcome these resistances. So you have to press it. You apply 1 kilonewton press or pressure, or 5 kilonewton, depending on the area of the electrode that you make, so that you reduce the compact resistance, you reduce the double layer, grain boundary resistance. Now your electrode is ready. You had a powder is mixed with the conducting particle, binder and solvent. You make it as a paste, you apply it on the current collector, dry it, press it, and your electrode is ready. To make a symmetric supercapacitor, you make two such identical electrodes, take it into a cell, add the electrolyte, then usual testing has to be done. Before we actually do the fabricate the supercapacitor device, you have to test it whether it is going to be a EDLC material or Faradaic material. To do this, you don't directly go for 2 electrode cell, you assemble 3 electrode cell. What is 3 electrode cell and a 2 electrode cell, or what are 2 electrode, 3 electrode cells? Your 2 electrode cell is the actual device. Both the negative electrode and the positive electrodes, if they are carbon, it is a supercapacitor device, symmetric device. Or one is ruthenium oxide, another one is a carbon, or maybe nickel oxide, again it is a supercapacitor. Okay, here it is asymmetric, the electrodes are different. How will you make sure that a particular electrode material is a Faradaic or non-Faradaic or EDLC? For that you have to assemble a 3 electrode cell and evolve or record cyclic voltammeter. What is 3 electrode cell? Your original electrode, for example, carbon or nickel oxide, ruthenium oxide, polyaniline is your original working electrode. And you have to take the cyclic voltammogram. Cyclic voltammogram, as I told in another class, it's a plot of current response versus the potential, and the potential is scanned at a particular rate, scan rate. So to control the potential, you require, or to know the potential of the working electrode or control the potential of the electrode, you require a reference electrode whose potential is very much known. For example, normal hydrogen electrode, NHE, or reversible hydrogen electrode, RHE, or other secondary standard electrodes.
Sir, excuse me.
Yes, please.
Sir, sorry to interrupt, but we have official time, sir. Sorry, it's 12:30.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll stop now. So you have to use one reference electrode, and your original electrode is your material electrode. And to compensate the current, you need to have a counter electrode. That configuration is electrode cell. So I think, yeah, I noticed now. So it is 12:30. We'll stop now. We'll continue this application and testing in the next class. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for reminding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.